Hello everyone, my name is Akankshu Nani, and welcome to my YouTube channel Neuro Chat with AG. On this channel, I plan to cover topics that are closest to my heart and support the neurodiverse community. Topics related to neurodiversity, autism spectrum disorder, and more. On the channel, I will interview thought leaders, esteemed researchers, scientists, professors, doctors, and psychologists, seeking their views and updates on their latest work, research, etc. I will also chat with parents of neurodiverse kids and adults and talk about experiences of neurodiverse individuals. Mr. Joel Godi is a visionary leader and a passionate advocate in the field of neurodiversity. He is an Audi etcher, and as the founder and CEO of NeuroGifted, an organization dedicated to supporting and empowering individuals with autism and other neurodiverse conditions, Mr. Godi has made significant strides in raising awareness and fostering inclusive environments. His work emphasizes the unique strengths and abilities of neurodiverse individuals, challenging societal perceptions and promoting a deeper understanding of neurodiversity. Under his leadership, NeuroGifted has become a beacon of hope and a catalyst for change, providing invaluable resources, support, and advocacy for neurodiverse communities. With a profound commitment to enhancing the lives of those he serves, Mr. Joel Godi continues to inspire and lead with compassion and innovation. Mr. Joel, welcome and thank you very much for the time today.
Thank you for having me and inviting me, Akansh.
Could you please talk about your background when you got your diagnosis and how that changed your career path?
So, by education, I'm a social psychologist, and I've been working all my life in L&D and OD, which is, like I mentioned earlier, organizational development and learning and development. And so I discovered I was autistic and also an ADHD when I was 40 years old. Okay, and that changed my entire focus of work, and and that's how I founded NeuroGifted. But before that, going back into my childhood, I think every neurodivergent individual knows that there's something different. Something is just not fitting. Something is just not right. The world, outside world, it seems to be hostile in many ways. And so we have to learn to navigate, and nobody teaches us that, right? And we have to learn how to grow, how to understand the world around us, the social system. So it was all very challenging. And it takes a toll on you over a long period of time. And that's what happened to me. I somehow managed. I'm the fortunate few autistics who can develop our own coping mechanisms to navigate this world, the education system, and the career development world. So I survived, but not many of us are. And so that doesn't mean I'm probably the exception. I'm not what generally happens in an autistic life. So that's what got me into the whole work that I'm doing now. And this is built out of conviction and lived experience. So I've lived an entire life. I'm 53 today. So 50 years of lived experience is a long, long experience to survive in this world. And I am still surviving, which is good news, which means that there is hope. And that's how I started off doing what I'm doing today.
Thank you. Your story is very inspiring. I'm about to turn 17, so I can't imagine what 50 years of experience would be like. And one question I had before everything else, could you please explain what an Audi etcher is?
Yeah, an audiature is like an acronym for an individual who is both autistic as well as an ADHD. So these are the two prominent conditions for a neurodivergent. There may be other specific learning disabilities that overlap these conditions, but this is what the word, the acronym means.
You mentioned founding NeuroGifted, so could you please describe what NeuroGifted is, its primary mission, and its programs and initiatives?
Well, the word itself, as you know, neuro and gifted. Many people think it's about people who are gifted, exceptionally gifted individuals. No. The reason I use that word is um, to celebrate the strengths of neurodivergence or neurodivergent individuals. All of us have strengths, and that's why I named my project. At that time, it was just a project when we started. It was not a company, and it was a project to create awareness around neurodivergent conditions, especially autism and ADHD, and probably fight some of the stigma and misconceptions surrounding these words, and also shift people's attention towards the social model of disability in a society that's so focused on the medical model of disability. So that was initially how I started. It evolved quickly to turn itself into a company. I didn't do that. And why? Because a lot of the organizations that I work with, and they started reaching out to implement neurodiversity initiatives within their organizations. And expertise in this area is rare in India. And 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 so I found myself doing a business, which I originally didn't intend to do. But here I am. And that's how NeuroGifted came into being. Now, what does NeuroGifted want to achieve? What are our goals? Short term, of course, is to create awareness. Long term is to enable inclusion, empower neurodivergent individuals to live a independent, sovereign life, give them access to financial freedom, and most importantly, dignity in life. How do we do that? We do that by creating avenues of opportunities to help them to grow. Most of the times we see a lot of people taking care of autistic children, and even in India we have hundreds, if not thousands, of social organizations working in this area. But you go back to them and ask them what happened to your children that you worked with 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Nobody has a clue. So my guess is as good as yours. I mean, like they could be anywhere on the streets, not being taken care of, not being given the support they need. And you know that neurodivergents are 4 times more likely to commit suicide versus a neurotypical individual. So it's a sad thing to happen in a country as large as India. And so I decided that we need to create opportunities. And we do that by changing the perceptions around neurodiversity and neurodivergent conditions and focus more on the social message rather than the medical message.
Another thing I saw that I found really interesting in your descriptions of NeuroGifted's goals. So how do we rewrite the narrative on neurodiversity?
Keep talking and use every platform you can. It's the same as activism. If you're a political activist, you're fighting for something, right? And you will do everything that's necessary to be loud, to talk to people, to work with groups, help people understand better. And you can't just focus on one group. You have to make sure that you're connecting with all levels of the social strata. That's important. Second is you have to engage with policymakers. Also, while taking this message, show them ways how they can make sure that neuro-inclusion is achieved in the proper sense. So that's one thing. Initially, I just went and used every public platform that I got to go and talk about it. It was a slow start. 8 years later, here we are. Here I am. I spend a lot of time speaking in conferences, seminars, workshops. So the message is going out, and people are beginning to see that there is much more to neurodivergent life, and neurodivergent traits than just disorders, as we call it. which I don't agree with the word, but all right. So let's assume, let's use the word disorder for a moment. So who defines what's a disorder and what's order, what's normal and what's abnormal? So these are all debatable issues and debatable topics. So we fight them, we talk, and I've seen a lot of good response from people from all sections of the society, and most importantly, the parent community, the caregiver community, because they're so locked into the medical model. For them, their child is sick or has a disease, right, and needs to be cured, and they're ready to do anything to make that happen, and which is a dangerous thing. And it's this kind of misconceptions still exist in society, even among the socially affluent and educated people. So we do that by addressing these core groups. In India, we've had activism on the rise, and recently we have a Mumbai court order banning the use of these words. Autism can be cured, or there is a cure for autism. So no advertisements are now allowed. Previously, we used to get so many advertisements on our social media, and promoting different kinds of therapies, which are promising to cure autism. So that is a misconception. I mean, everybody knows that, but still, parents want hope, and so they're cashing in on that hope. So fighting these issues in the society, and especially in a country like India, which is largely conservative, so it's a challenge, and so that's what we need to be doing here.
Thank you. And that's a great segue to my next question. So could you please explain what fostering a neuro-inclusive ecosystem means?
Well, building an ecosystem, takes years, if not decades. In the corporate world, in the career world, it means something different. Whereas in education, it means something different. In society, it means something different. And Eastern cultures versus Western cultures, we know that, for example, body language, a simple thing like, say, eye contact, is not, I mean, the inability of a person to make eye contact or constant eye contact or good quality eye contact is a disorder according to the Western civilizations, right? Western cultures. But in India, you will find that you don't make eye contact purposefully with people whom you respect. Traditionally, that is the thing. Many times, wives don't make contact with their father-in-laws or mother-in-laws. So this is a culture it welcomes that kind of behavior. It portrays obedience, right? Also position in society. So you don't look into a person's eyes. Sometimes it is taken to be as you're attacking the person, or you're being rude by staring at someone or looking into someone when they're talking to you angrily. So so there are many instances like this. So the basic understanding of behaviors and is different across East and West. Now, with that being said, the work has to be done at all levels of sections, from the time a baby is born to identification of autism or ADHD or any of the other neurodivergent conditions. It has to be early on, so that healthcare support should be accessible and affordable at the early stage. That's one thing. It's very critical, because the more you delay, the lesser time you have to help the youngster, the child develop good coping mechanisms, because the child needs it if they have to survive in this world. So early care is very important, identification and care. Second is, nobody thinks of the parents. Parents go through a lot of trauma through this process. It drains them of their resources, their energy. Their own mental well-being is not looked into. So there has to be a support system for caregivers that takes care of caregivers. So building networks, having regular workshops and meetups, how to overcome our own personal stress and anxiety of parents. Every parent thinks about what after us, what is going to happen to our child after us. That is a constant fear that they live with once they have a child who's autistic, for example. So that kind of support system has to be built right from that age. Then comes the education process. How do you make school education or college education accessible and inclusive for learners of different styles? Right now, with technology, we have solutions, of course. Earlier, we did not have. So I see technology being a big game changer. So now you have um, content being distributed in various formats, in visual, audio, text, you name it. You have content that can be delivered in any format that a student can learn, which is a good thing. So that can cater to neurodivergent individuals also to learn in their own styles, which means they will be able to keep up with the rigid school system. See, the school system is very regimented, and not every learner, people like me, don't fit into that environment. So for us, education and school was a traumatical experience. So that, and next, then comes the dark phase, where there is absolutely zero. You hit a dead end. There are no opportunities for you to find jobs in jobs that provide the accommodations and support that you need, which will help you sustain. So you will see neurodivergence typically jumping from one company to another, 1 year here, 6 months there. They're not able to stay in one place because they don't fit in. It's hostile, and they burn out within months or years. I typically burned out twice. I mean, once every 2 years. So 2 years was the max I could work in one company, right? So as you can see, there's a lot of work to be done across the lifespan of an individual.
I have seen some of the very powerful videos on NeuroGifted which address misconceptions and the limited knowledge a majority of society has about neurodiversity. Can you share your views on misconceptions about autism?
I mentioned a little earlier about, for example, eye contact. Okay, since I work with adults and I work in organizations, so I will tell you from my perspective. You see, when we try to uh, get neurodivergent individuals to find good quality work, right? The most difficult part is the hiring phase, where the organization conducts interviews and assessments to select their candidates. So the face-to-face interview is a very big component of that. So there is a panel of 2 or 3 people sitting there, and you have an autistic walk-in. Now you have to understand neurodivergent adult. Where is he coming from? What's the baggage they're bringing? They're bringing baggage with very low confidence, usually, because they were shunned by society. They were not part of popular friends, and they didn't have many friends. So they're not very sociable in the sense that they don't know how to approach a person and make friends. So they just sit by themselves. So the label given to them is introvert or eccentric or these kind of labels when actually they're trying to live their life without offending or hurting anybody. So most of us are afraid of that situation because you know, we have faced those situations in the past. So we come with all these things in our head. So which means that the candidate is highly anxious, right? He's going through a lot of stress. Now, when that candidate comes in front of you, a person who can't even, smile naturally in that situation, you can't maintain eye contact because that's too much of input going into the brain. Who can't be natural because he's literally acting it out, trying to copy someone else he saw, some other behaviors that he saw, thinking that that's acceptable. So it's that candidate is immediately rejected. There's no chance he will get through the face-to-face interview. Like that, I'm not saying the interviewers are biased. They have been trained to select candidates who are confident, who are spontaneous, who have eye contact. And, this autistic individual probably won't fit into any of those labels. And so, how do you select someone? So, even though you're qualified, you're skilled, you will still not be taken for these superficial reasons. So, candidates get rejected. I'm just giving you an idea of how it happens, even in the workplace. Uh, I wouldn't go to the cafeteria because that noise is too big for me, too loud. Okay, I can't. So I would sit and eat by myself. So people assume that I'm unfriendly. I don't want to make friends. I think too highly of myself. I'm arrogant. You getting how these kind of things happen in a autistic life? It happens all through our lives. But in reality, what we are trying to do is just fit in, trying to protect ourselves in this environment, which a neurotypical won't understand because he never experienced this. Our sensory sensitivities are so heightened, especially when we are anxious. That makes us even more vulnerable to these noise and smell and temperature and all these pressures that come from outside. So, so an autistic life is not an easy life. There are so many misconceptions. One of the major things that I have understood is, see, people assume that an autistic is low on IQ. Well, no, many autistics are very high IQ. Okay, and this is the reality. But that's one misconception. People assume that because they're slow, they're not intelligent. They they associate spontaneity and speed with intelligence. As a psychologist, I can tell you no, there's no connection. Right? There's no connection between speed and intelligence. A person can be slow for various reasons. Right? If in case of many autistics, information processing can take time. In our work, we ask for the 6-second rule. So when you ask a question, count slowly to 6, and you'll probably get a brilliant answer. So if you don't count to that and move on to the next question, or you put more pressure asking the second question and the third question, you will find that the person is just stumped and is quiet. He is not responding. So these are things that these insights can really help you unlock an autistic mind and create that safe space where autistics can function. And when they function, they really do function well. So misconceptions, there are many. I mean, like in a day-to-day life, you will, like I told you, body language, behavior, communication. We prefer direct communication, effective communication, be to the point. Don't give me the whole story. Just tell me exactly what it is you need, what do we want, and we communicate the same way. So you should not be offended because I don't know how to cushion my words and make it comfortable for you. So I might sound rude, but no, I'm not. I'm just communicating the way I know, the way it's natural to me. Right? So if it doesn't meet your expectation of rosy communication, well, I don't have it. So there are many things, Akanksha. I mean, like we can take an entire day talking about the misconceptions that people carry. But these are very simple things. You just have to be open-minded. You just have to have empathy, and you will find that, my God, people communicate and learn and think in different ways, and it's a good thing. Why should everybody think like one? Why should everybody behave like you? I mean, take it as it goes. Accept each individual for who they are, for whatever reason.
You also mentioned that most people are not aware of the relationship between mental health and neurodiversity. Could you please elaborate on that?
Yeah. So let me tell you when this started. A lot of organizations were focusing on mental health, and they were not looking into the neurodiversity aspect of mental health. You see, I'll tell you one thing. So when an organization, say I'm only talking about organizations now, this is the only area that I can speak on. So when an organization hires somebody, we hear a lot about diversity, right? So they don't hire because you're a woman or you're a man or you belong to the LGBTQI community or so and so ethnicity and so on. That's not what they're hiring you for your cognitive abilities, right? The cognitive wealth that you bring into an organization. Correct. So, so it's an exchange. They pay money for your neurological wiring, and your neurological wiring is fundamental to that transaction. It's only later on it matters whether you're a man or a woman or a member of the LGBTQI community, or all that comes later. If it was not for your neurological wiring, they wouldn't hire you in the first place. Am I right?
Yeah.
Just to give you one example, I can give you the same example in so many other situations. Now, so a company has people and it looks at all its employees. One way to look at it is all my employees are my cognitive wealth, right? These are all the different things. Somebody is a diamond, somebody is gold, somebody is silver, somebody is platinum, but all this is my wealth. It's my asset. So what happens is when organizations start thinking about mental well-being of employees, which got highlighted mostly during the COVID situation, during the pandemic. So companies found that a lot of people were struggling mentally. And some of those companies also saw that, well, some are not. The guys who were traditionally struggling were not struggling. And what was this? The neurotypical people who are the usual performers were struggling. And the traditional non-performers were now beginning to perform. So what was this connection? That's when we, as an organization, based on a little bit of research that we had done, we went to organizations and started revealing to them that, see, statistically speaking, anywhere between 50 to 20% of your employees are neurodivergent. They could be autistic, they could be ADHD, they could be dyslexic, dyspraxic. Statistically speaking, see, 1 in every 5 people in the global population is neurodivergent. So statistically speaking, you have these numbers in your organization. It may be slightly less, let's say 10%. And then you have neurotypicals who have neurodivergent traits. For example, somebody who's sensitive to smell or light, but they are not diagnosed neurodivergent, they are neurotypical, or the intensity of their sensitivity is not so much that you can diagnose this individual according to the DSM-5 criteria, right? To diagnose a person, they need 2 or 3 or 4 conditions up to a certain level. Only then you can be diagnosed. If you just have one condition, you will not be diagnosed, right? So there are many neurotypicals who have neurodivergent traits. Now you bring that number together, you will see that nearly 30% of your employees are affected by neurodivergent traits in their mental health, their overall mental health. That means 30% of an organization's mental well-being is affected because of neurodivergent traits. Now, if I take that into the outside world, same story. There you have 15% of neurodivergents who are suffering and 15% of neurotypicals with neurodivergent traits who are suffering. So you still have that 30% of people around you who are suffering for reasons which have nothing to do with financial problems, marital problems, any other relationship problems, or any other genetic health problems. Right? So that's a huge number. So neurodiversity, understanding neurodiversity and providing neuro-affirming care to everybody definitely takes care of your 30%, if not more. That's the connection. And it's a very powerful connection. That's a huge chunk of the population. In a country like India, where we're closing in on 1.5 billion people. So you tell me, how much is 30%? 50 million, 500 million people whose mental health can be taken care or, uh, can be affected by neuroaffirming practices.
Thank you.
That's the connection.
Yeah, I didn't know it was such a large number. Um, and another kind of follow-up question that I have, in the neurodiverse community, there's a higher prevalence of like anxiety and depression. When people were looking at mental health, did they misdiagnose, I guess, like instead of thinking that, that this person has anxiety or depression, they're just behaving like that because they're neurodiverse. Do you think that's something that happened as well?
Not just for neurodiversity, it happens to everybody. See, mental health is something that has come into focus in recent years. Earlier, in our times, when we were growing up, a person who's crying or a person who's saying, is told not to do it. That's it. Fall in line. Get up, shape up, get in line. That's it. Nobody is asking you these questions. Nobody cares. It's not that they don't care, they just don't know. You see? So it's only now that we are looking. And the reason why organizations are looking at mental health more than, say, governments is because an organization's survival and profitability depends on that. That's why they're putting the money in and walking the talk because it really matters for their own survival. Whereas governments can be slow. Governments can say, hey, this is not something that's really worth looking into. This is not something that really needs so much care. You give him time, he will, he or she will recover. It's not a problem. So that's there. That difference is there. So I see that difference, very big difference between how society is approaching mental health care versus how corporations are doing it. Corporations are doing it for their own survival. Okay? And society is slow because they don't really understand. They don't really get it. It's only now that's a lot of education and again, you find a lot of quacks also coming in with solutions all over the place, promising, to cure you of all your disease. But let me tell you that when it comes to neurodivergent individuals, the prevalence of anxiety and depression is because of the stress they endure on a day-to-day basis. For a neurotypical, he or she might have 1 or 2 days of stress, or maybe a week of stress, and then life gets back to, he de-stresses easily. Neurodivergents wake up from morning and from there, it's stress. And therefore, anxiety is always there. The anxiety, the fear of failure, the fear of offending someone, the fear of miscommunicating something important, the fear of losing the job, the fear of not what's going to happen to my future because I'm not able to make money. Come on, these are reasons enough to be depressed, for any person to be depressed. So this is how you say it. So it's not because neurodivergents are mentally weak and therefore they get anxious and depressed easily. No, that is the medical model of understanding. The social model says that it's because their environment is like this. The social construct is like this, that they are naturally depressed. They don't fit in. So they don't see a future. How do you expect them to be in good mental health? So they are sensitive. They are carrying all this. I mentioned earlier, I was telling you about they come with baggage. Right? Most likely, I'm not saying everybody does, but most likely they come with baggage and they need time to fit in. They need time to adapt. Because of that, not because they're slow, because they're very cautious. It's like walking on eggshells. You see, their entire life they're walking on eggshells. So it is natural. So I don't see the difference why a neurodivergent, should be thought of as mentally weak because he's depressed. It's just that his circumstances and his surroundings, his environment is much more harsher and hostile to him versus a neurotypical individual. But then these are real issues. We know, I mentioned also that, neurodivergents are 4 times more likely to commit suicide as opposed to neurotypical individuals, 4 times. So you can say that for every one neurotypical suicide, there are 4 neurodivergent suicides. So it's not something that needs to be taken lightly. Anxiety and depression are real issues. But if we create the support systems, if we create the accommodations, whether it's workplace, society, education, and in childcare, you will find that you will not get this result.
In India, how are corporates responding to the inclusion of neurodiverse individuals in the workforce? And how is NeuroGifted contributing to addressing or facilitating the better inclusion of neurodiverse individuals in the workplace?
Um, well, in India, we started about nearly 2 decades ago, like 15 years ago. Uh, some big names in the tech industry started hiring neurodivergent individuals. Well, the early hires, the companies that did this early hiring, all ran into problems because they didn't understand the Indian context. They saw the success stories of what happened to that company in the US, and they used the same template and they assumed that it will work in India. One, no. For example, an autistic in the US, by the time he comes to his job, has already received a lot of counseling care, psychological care, health care by the time he becomes an adult, right? So, the autistic adult that you get there would be, for the most part, different from the autistic adult in India. Here you have the adult who was denied, who was suppressed, who was oppressed, excluded. So you have a person who comes with a lot of negativity by the time they come to adulthood. That's one big difference. I'm not saying American autistics don't have any challenges. All I'm saying is, as compared to India, you will find this stark difference. I worked with companies. Some of my clients have are headquartered in the US and they're doing neuroinclusion in India. So they have to relearn how to do this in India. What are the skill gaps? What are the what to expect when you're calling for neurodivergent applicants into your organization? So the applicants are very different. That's one. Second is there is a lot of stigma in India. So even if someone is diagnosed, they will not tell you. So there's no disclosure won't be there. Very rare disclosure you have. So that's one more thing, identifying autistics. How? They will not come until they feel safe, right? They will not disclose. They will just come and apply as a regular applicant. So these are challenges that organizations face in India. And not only that, in autism, there is a visible and invisible or non-apparent component. Visible autistics or apparent autism is roughly 15 to 20% again. That means for every one or two autistics that you can observe, you can identify by observation, observing behavior and communication. There are 8 others who you cannot identify. People like me, for example. My autistic condition does not affect my ability to communicate. I have other sensory challenges. Okay, so corporations are finding it difficult to address the invisible component, because how do you understand something you can't see? If you see a person carrying a walking stick or sitting on a wheelchair, it's immediately identified and you know what you need to do to help that person, right? But what do you do when the person is just standing like you and is talking like you? How do you support this individual? You don't know anything about it. So companies have initially found it, it took nearly 10 years, more than 10 years for companies to turn around and understand that, hey, this is not going to work in India like this. We need to change our processes. How are we going to do this? We need to relearn this. Okay. So earlier what happened was they hired a few people just to be, as a pilot project, and they ran into a lot of trouble. Their managers were burning out, their neurotypicals were complaining and saying that, this is not part of my job. Why should I be doing this? All these kind of complaints came and they didn't know how to cope. And so they abandoned those projects. and or they continue to not hire anymore, but keep these 5 or 6 or 10 people on the rolls, but not expecting anything from them, not assigning them any important work. So it became a charity proposition. The company is just spending some money, to support 5 individuals because for them, they can't do anything for themselves. So, the charity proposition is born from the medical model, right? So this is how organizations continued for 10 long years, more than 10 years. Now, post-COVID, the conversation has changed. The narrative has changed. That it's not just the charity component, there is also a very profound, a very powerful business component to neurodiversity. Neurodivergence, for the most part, due to neuroplasticity, they are in a situation where the brain wires itself to make up for deficits in one area by compensating with benefits in other areas. Take, for example, a visually challenged individual. Okay, the brain responds to the outside world based on the information that the eyes, ears, nose, tongue are giving it, right? That's how it understands the world around it. The brain itself cannot see anything. It gets input from all these senses, and therefore it creates an environment and responds to that. Now, supposing I close my eyes, my brain does not receive very important input, right? So what my brain does is it rewires itself and compensates me for the loss of my eyesight by giving me other benefits like tactile abilities, like I can touch and feel something and tell you whether this is a 100 rupees or $1 or $100 bill. That's how it happens. It's known as neuroplasticity. So in the case of neurodivergence, the same thing happens. You see, so I might be slow in processing information, but I can have tremendous strength in another area, okay, which an average person will not be able to do. So this is the message. This is the business case. Okay, this is one of the business cases. There are many other, of course. So I'm just giving you to a short explanation. So now companies have turned around to see this and say that, hey, here we are. So we have a business component, we have a charity component. Both of them go together, and this is how we can achieve success in neurodiversity. And now we are seeing organizations putting in the money. That's why, because there is a business case, they are now ready to put in money because now there is profit. Earlier, it was just survival. Earlier, mental health was just a survival point for our own survival. But now neuro-inclusion is about profit. So this is where this messaging has changed, the narrative has changed, and we have seen a lot of inroads into not just tech industry. Now we have manufacturing, pharma, and oil coming to the picture.
Another awesome segue into my next question. So, with all these changes, could you share a success story about inclusion in the workforce that you've seen at NeuroGifted?
Difficult to select one. I'll tell you one of the recent, meaning something that we did earlier in this year. So we had this client who had already had a bad experience with neuro-inclusion, and they had abandoned the project. And now they were nearing a stage where they cannot budget for it anymore, meaning that they will have to fire the existing neurodivergent employees. So we went to this company and we sat them down and said, see, you spent 7 years trying to make this work. And now you're tired, you want to get it. Now you'll blame the autistic employees for this not working, right? You're not going to take the blame. You're going to blame them. So why don't you give us a chance? We will bring you a new picture how to do this. So the organization said, sure. And we had a talk with the leadership. So the thing I said to them was, forget hiring. Okay. So you're scared about hiring. So why don't we look inside? Why don't we see how many neurodivergents we already have in our company? So they said, how do we do that? How will people come out? I said, just give me 2, 3 months time. So we organized a series of talks within the organization across the different seniority levels. We came top down, and we first spoke to the leadership, and then to the vice president levels and business unit leaders and unit managers, and it went on like that. And 2 months down the line, we sent out an invitation saying that we are forming an ERG. And ERG, for your listeners who don't know, it's known as an employee resource group. Every company has an ERG for different reasons, for gender and for different groups. They have ERGs. So we said we're going to start in ERG for neurodiversity. We gave a short note on what neurodiversity is, and we gave a vision statement saying that why the company wants to do it. That vision statement was meant to give, we knew we were basically fishing within the organization. So to find some neurodivergents who will come and support this ERG. So you know how many people came? 700 people turned up for the first ERG. The leadership was so shocked. They said 700 people. And among these 700 people, there were parents of neurodivergent individuals, there were spouses, there were siblings, and neurodivergent themselves. That's how large the community was in that company. And they were going to abandon the neurodiversity initiative because they didn't know how to do. So this worked. And it changed the complete trajectory of that organization's neuro-inclusion project. Now they're aggressively looking forward to inviting more neurodivergent talent because they know that it is the inevitable future. And in terms of creativity or innovation or overall productivity and basic retention, there's so many benefits. But sometimes it's talking too much about the business case also is not good. We also have to talk of the social cause. And there are autistics and other neurodivergent individuals who may not be that productive. Right? They may not be not that productive. They can be the average Joe in your workforce, but still they have a right to gainful opportunities and career growth. So just because of their differences in behavior and sociability and other factors, you can't deny them that right. So that is also an argument. It's not just always about business case and profits and survival. So this is where we found, when we said, we asked the opportunity to look, organization to look inside, look within itself, we got tremendous result from that.
I know you mentioned earlier about the ban in Mumbai about using terms like cure for autism. And I know you've been involved in improving policies in favor of neurodiverse individuals. So could you share another recent policy change that has been passed or is being worked on?
See, we haven't yet gotten to the point where we can publish any policy because a lot of companies are still working on policy. Policy making is not easy. It has to happen at the very highest level of the organization. It's something like changing the constitution of a country, So policies can't just be changed. They have to go through the entire rigorous cycle. It takes a long time to happen, and we are in the process of assisting companies in making those policies. Well, at the macro level, you can make a policy statement saying that we are going to do this from next year. But then how it works and how it translates into the different systems and structures within the organization is something that needs to be looked into. And organizations are wary, or they are defensive of if they feel that anything is going to disrupt their existing systems. So they will be a little defensive about it. So it takes time. It's a process. It goes again from top down. A policy statement from the above has to get translated right down. I think in India, we are just beginning to work on policies. We have made a lot of change in our practices. Okay, but any practice can be done temporarily as long as that leader is there, that practice will prevail. Once the leader is transferred to another role and a new leader comes in, the practice will change. So a process has to be backed by policy. So what we have done is temporary practice changes and process changes that have happened, but nowhere really we have seen policy at that level being stated. So if a company says, okay, we believe that 15% of the global population is neurodivergent. In the next decade, we want to see our employee that representation in our employee strength is a policy statement. But it's a very bold statement to make. It's not easy to make that in their policy. Because once you do that in a policy, now all the funds, everything has to line up to achieve that goal. You see, that's how it works in organizations. So it's taking time. It's still in the works. So hopefully, sometime this year, we should see at least one company come up with one policy statement, and that will have its ripple effect on other organizations.
What are your views on education for neurodiverse individuals, including skill based learning, and what is being done to improve it? In India, especially um, for individuals when they're going through the schooling system, there's a lot more suppression. So I know here in the US, if you have a diagnosis, you can get a 504, for example, or some other plan that'll help support you. So what are the options for individuals in India?
In India, again, it's only in recent times. Earlier, such children were not admitted into the regular schools and they had to go to special schools. We call them special education schools, SEN schools. Students with special education needs. So those schools were not about you achieving any marks or getting through your learning. It's just taking care. It's more like a daycare, teaching you a few skills along the way. So I always felt it was unfair. And neurodivergence was just clubbed with any other groups like people with Down syndrome and all that, put in one place and play with toys, have some nice library books, study when you want. So there's no structured learning over there, except for a few skills like how to take care of yourself, how to fold your shirt, how your day-to-day activities would be taught there. So what do you expect from them? They're not going to find jobs. They're not going to be doing business. They're not going to be entrepreneurs. They're going to be ending up as a burden to the society. Right? So now what we have is we have special ed teachers, what we call shadow teachers, who are with you in the classroom and help you to cope, kind of assist the teacher in helping you, only you, learn. And it's an added burden on the parents because the parent has to pay for that teacher. But many times the school does not admit such a child in the first place. So recently, the Indian government passed a law that if an autistic child or any neurodivergent child comes and asks you for admission, you cannot refuse. You have to admit, you are bound to admit. There is no other way. And provide the accommodations that the child needs. But there is a law, but there is no implementation. Schools regularly turn away children who come because they don't want their class to be disrupted in any way, slowed down because they have a very tight academic calendar. Teachers are already heavily burdened. They can't take all this. They don't have space in the classroom to have a special teacher come and say it. All these kind of things arise. So that inclusion is still an onward journey. There are a few schools who have opened up their doors to admit students in their regular classes. But that is also after a lot of vetting. So I don't see any near-term solution to this. Skill-based learning is, of course, what actually works for neurodivergent individuals because our brains are hardwired for something. And if we are allowed to learn what comes naturally to us, we will excel in that. According to JP Morgan Chase, their neurodivergent teams were 90 to 140% more productive than their peers, neurotypical peers. 90 to 140% more productive when given the work that suits their cognitive style. You see? So we know that that is the solution, but the school system itself is so tight. There's nothing to do. Nowadays, we're having alternative education systems, but the problem is if you study in those schools, cannot be admitted to higher education in India. So the universities will not accept you, the college will not recognize your schooling. So there's no pathway for future education and skill development. So that's the reality. There's a lot of, again, work to be done. There are people working, opening special schools, but nobody has a solution. What happens when this person comes to 15 years, 16 years? Then what? Okay, how is he going to how is he going to, manage his life? How is he going to be independent? Some people have come up with art schools, teaching them to do pottery, ceramic making, painting. Yeah, it worked for some people. Didn't work for a lot of people. So we don't know the ultimate solution. But skill-based education, of course, we all know that that is the answer. But how do we do it? Who's going to do it? Is the question.
The first is for that law you mentioned. So that's for like public schools, right? So if a student wants entry to a public school, that law says they should be allowed.
You should understand, public schools in India are not the same as public schools in America. In America, public schools are the basic, they're there everywhere, they're well funded as compared to India. In India, public schools are, nobody goes there. If a village, anybody in this country who has a little bit of money or can afford it will send their schools to private schools, their children to private schools, because public schools are non-defunct, they don't have teachers, they're not funded, they don't have furniture, they don't have doors, even doors and windows in some cases, so that they only exist in rural areas. In cities, nobody goes. Yes, there is a government in Delhi in the last 5 years that tried to revive the public school system by heavily funding it and allowing. See, in India, education and healthcare was supposed to be fundamental rights of citizens. So they were supposed to be public properties or public endeavors. But they were turned over to the private sector by governments for profit. So now education and healthcare is all about profit making. So unless you have the money, you don't have access to education. It's as simple as that. Yes, there are scholarships. Now government has come up with scholarships to help, to cover up for that. But then, it's again, it's not merit based. It's caste based or, economic strata based or things like that. So then it's a situation where you cannot roll back anything. You cannot tell these people who have invested millions and millions of dollars in building hospitals and schools to stop everything and turn it over to the government. That's not going to happen. So I don't see the government in a position to make any change in this area apart from making policies and making laws. It's finally up to the civil society to do anything.
Like if a neurodiverse individual wanted to go to a private school, for example, and assuming his parents have the money that they need to pay for his or her admission, so it would be up to the private school to decide whether they take that child or not.
No, by law, the private school has to admit whether you have money or not. If you are in a position to pay the private school fees, then they cannot refuse your application. People have gone to court when their children have been turned away by different schools. But usually those are settled out of court by paying them money and hushing it. So, but if you're powerful and you have the money, yes, your child will be admitted and nothing will be expected from your child. They will just push him along because there is no question of failure in Indian schools. You know that, right? By law, you even if you fail in your exams, you will be sent to the next class. So there's no question of keeping you back for another year till you pass your papers. So they will just push your child till the top, and there he will not anyway pass the public exam. So he'll be out. So parents have to find some other solution at that stage. But if you have the money, the school will take the money and just let him sit in class. There are some very I have worked on a couple of projects trying to teach the traditional schools, large schools, to accommodate neurodivergent children. And teachers were so hardwired towards student behavior and discipline that they were not willing to look at anything. For example, take a fidgety child or a child who's constantly, gazing outside the window, not looking at the teacher, um, a child who's doodling on his paper while teacher is talking. So all these behaviors are not acceptable, but we know that they are all neurodivergent behaviors. Some neurodivergents concentrate better when they are doodling or on screen time. I can hear you and focus on you better when I'm doing something else. I can't just do one thing. That's my ADHD. I have to do multiple things. So I have to listen to music while I draft a big project report. For others, it's no, music is disruptive. No, not for me. I need that. It's like petrol to my vehicle. So there are our behaviors and our thing is completely, it's a different world. So teachers are so hardwired, they believe that they cannot manage the class. If I allow one child to fidget, right, then the rest of the class will become indisciplined. So there are practical problems. The traditional view of education in India is very different. So I don't know. I don't know why I came into this side, whether that was your question or not. I suddenly
Yeah, no.
don't
Yeah, you
know.
answered my question. Yeah. So when you have neurodiverse individuals seeking work opportunities, how do you train them? Like you mentioned with the skills-based training, like if they have a natural talent for example, music or drawing, would you push them to cultivate those skills, or would you help them, I guess, have a more well-rounded profile?
Well, in my organization, we look at individuals who are looking for gainful employment. That is the scope of my work. But I engage with other organizations, like I mentioned, artwork, music, dance, who deal with these things. But I don't know about their financial survivability, sustainability in the long run, unless somebody is managing that. So what I see in the NGOs, in some NGOs, is they get these children, they train them in artwork, and they sell this artwork, saying that this is disability art, autistic art. They sell across the world for a lot of money, and they don't share it with the artists themselves because it costs a lot of money to run the organization. So they take a lion's share of that and give the rest to the autistics. Now, when it comes to autistics, you pay them peanuts. Still, people feel that hey, at least he earned this much. So it's not that he got cheated. It's good. It's that they're happy that the organization actually paid them something. Okay, so they're happy the child is taken care of. They're not worried about the money part. But how many people can afford this? Only people from affluent families are able to afford this. Keeping their child in art schools, dance schools, all these things. It's not for the average person. We do something called cognitive profiling. We take an individual and we profile their cognitive capabilities, by which we know what he likes to do, or what he's going to be good at, and then curate job roles for him. That is what we do.
What are your suggestions to the family members of neurodiverse individuals to help with mental health care? Things to watch out for.
One, first rule, take care of yourself. And if you are good, if you are fine, there is a scope that your child also can be taken care of. If you are damaging yourself and you have an unsustainable life, that's not going to be helpful for the child. Because I understood one thing, parents have to be in good shape to be able to take care of their child. So that's the first thing. Second, don't run after what all the quacks tell you. Please do your research, follow good advice. Don't think that autism and all these things are cures. They're not diseases to be cured in the first place. They are neurological differences. being autistic can have some disability component to it. Being an ADHD can be disabling at times, but there is no cure to it. I have to learn how to cope with my disabilities. Disabilities in the social context, you will find that I'm disabled most times because of my environment, not necessarily because of me, right? So that is also something. So don't always look at disability as something that is inside me. It's also, it can be caused by my environment also. See this. This is my disability. You have normalized it so much that you now don't look at it as a disability because I have a coping mechanism. Same way, I have to develop coping mechanisms for other disabilities that I have and encourage that instead of trying to cure me. Parents spend all their money, resources, time in the early years trying to cure their children. And finally, they lose everything and then come to the realization that, hey, there's no cure. I just have to learn, teach him how to, develop and be himself and encourage him in what his brain is good at. See how much time and money you lost. That money could have been used to his development.
How would parents, families of neurodiverse individuals, or neurodiverse individuals um, get involved with, connect with, or support NeuroGifted?
At this stage, we want more and more people to come and lend their voice. The cause at this moment needs voices more than anything else. We need people to come and talk. We need people to come and support those voices who are talking. So we need activists, we need allies. And parents have to be at the forefront of this movement because it's their future at stake. It's their child's future at stake. And more parents come and start talking and start lending voices, we'll be happy to provide those platforms, right? And make sure that your children are pointed in the right direction. All the neurogifted usually works with people who are in their 20s and above, right? Usually that's the people who come to us. But then future is future, and we can network and we can connect you to the right resources so that you don't waste your time and you progress fast in helping your child learn to navigate this world.
Is there anything else you would like to share with our audience about NeuroGifted or your personal journey?
Look, one question that people fail to ask is, what if you don't identify or discover and then accept and embrace your neurodivergence or that of your child's or that of your siblings or your spouse? For me, it almost cost me my life. At 40, I was dying. Okay, and finding out and discovering that I was finally autistic, and that was the answer, and then ADHD helped me to rediscover myself, which rejuvenated my life, turned around my health issues. 13 years later, here I am. I'm still working. A person who was going to die. See, there's a cost. You probably don't realize it initially. So don't deny your child. Give them the healthcare that they need. Don't put them through therapies that suppress them, force them, traumatize them. You may not be alive when they face the consequences, or you may not be in a position to help them when they finally reach a place where their body just gives up. So avoid that situation and learn to accept and embrace one's identity. There is hope at the end of the tunnel if you do the right thing, right? You do all the wrong things and then you expect that somehow something will happen. No, won't happen. Unfortunately, it won't happen. So educate yourself, connect with the right people, and move fast. That's the best message I can give.
Mr. Joel, thank you so much for the valuable time today. You gave a
My
lot of
pleasure.
anecdotes that, a lot of things I learned today, and It's been a really wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Akash. All the best for all your endeavors. Stay connected.